Yeah, been there.
Yeah.
Wasn't well myself this week.
Oh dear. You weren't eating seafood again, were you?
That's all I eat, isn't it? So,
Well, got
bloody
some.
pescatarians.
Oh, apparently
So
that it's receiving our content now.
good, good.
We are
The meat
live.
in house.
Hope so. I mean, we've been live for a good minute or two. It's just the whole YouTube panel's trying to catch up with us, maybe.
Yeah, I can't get onto the YouTube channel.
The channel.
Yeah, I think it's just logged me out of the account for some reason.
Yeah, all our settings seems to have just randomly changed and reset, which is all bizarre. But hello, everybody who is watching the stream, which is now fixed and working with sound.
Aha. So,
So there's
to the news.
to the news. News for us, like I was just mentioning before we actually got sound. The new Reaper tutorial should hopefully be out on Monday, which is
Fine.
Reaper 101, but actually filmed properly. All the audio and video are now synced on my editing machine, but having had a very ill baby that I've been looking after this week, I've not had much time to finish that edit. But that's all coming very soon.
Have you? So now that it's finished, what do you feel? Do you feel it's going to be? Other than obviously formatting and structure and stuff, how do you think it compares to the one that's already on there? So someone that's already watched the one that we've already got, what would you would say to them? Should they watch it again?
Maybe. I mean, it's much more structured and much more detailed this time. Because I've gone back and watched the old one, made a list of notes, and actually gone through it in sections. I've done practical demonstrations of everything this time, like this is how you plug in a MIDI keyboard, actually pulled over a MIDI keyboard, plugged the thing in, and so well, these are the menus that are going to come up, this is what's going to happen. And I've actually gone in and taken the time rather than rushing through anything, and made sure that nothing in the basics has been kind of glossed over. So for anyone who really is past the basics, it's probably a bit too basic.
Yeah.
But then the style that this one's been done in, I'm very happy with, so I think I'm going to definitely be redoing the rest of the series. And then taking all the suggestions that people have given us over the years, if you should do one about this, you should do one about that. And rather than a 5-part series, it's probably going to be more like 10 or more parts. So it's going to end up as quite the series.
Cool.
Yeah, that's going to take a while to get to, but...
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I mean, this one, the original Reaper 101 was about 35 minutes, and this one's over an hour.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a lot more detail in there.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
And yeah, so the mastering tutorial's out now, and that's done quite well already as a video, and then hopefully that's going to be a big one for the channel over the next couple of years, because it's the kind of evergreen content that shouldn't be flash in the pan and fade away.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So yeah, if any of you just getting to the point where you've got a mix and you need to look at mastering, watch our mastering tutorial, because it's not just about how to make things louder. That's easy. It's about what is mastering, how do I approach it, what do I need to even get to that point, and then if you've ever used Ozone by Isotope, it's then a step-by-step of how to go through how to get to the end point. And the end point's different for everybody, which is why it's quite a pragmatic thing. That tutorial's over an hour long as well.
You don't do things by half, though, do you? So.
Well, I try not to. For anybody who puts comments on our videos saying you talk too much, well, sorry, the videos are getting longer, not shorter. But the amount of detail is getting larger, which for a lot of people really is kind of the important thing. And because it's all in sections, you can just skip ahead, really, if that's what you need now, rather than... the older tutorials, I think some of them are a bit more train of thought-ish and a bit stream of consciousness. And so I'd be darting in between subjects a little bit, because that's how my mind works in a live context. But with a big set of notes next to me of sections I want to talk about, it's made it much more compartmentalised and much more structured. And I think that's definitely working.
I've just found the best thing in Windows 10 ever. Did you know that if you go to settings and colors, there's a button which is choose your default app mode, and you can select dark mode, and then Chrome and everything automatically just goes dark.
Yes, dark mode's a relatively new thing. I think it was in the creators update. But it's
sorry, it really annoys me that anytime I go onto a different tab to look at like news and things, my face goes bright white because my screen is now white because I'm so close to my monitor. So.
Yes.
Cool. So.
Oh, do I list times with the topics? Not yet, but I'm sure if I went back and did that, that's quite possible. It's not quite that clear as like this is EQ, this is compression, because I do kind of switch back and forward, but I can put times in for kind of rough sections. I'm sure that'll probably help some people actually. Yes. Okay, so let's move on to news that is not us. So here's something that I thought was pretty cool. Scientists have created the loudest measured sound in the world, essentially. And just before I read it, guess how many decibels the loudest sound is, roughly?
Oh, the loudest sound. I couldn't say.
Okay,
like,
well,
the loudest that that mankind have made or that exists.
That measurably has been measured on this planet.
Has it gone to 200 dB?
It's gone beyond 200 dB.
Okay.
Yeah.
300?
Not quite. It hit 270.
Wow.
That's
loud.
That is loud. To explain to anyone
would that deafen you instantly?
Well, yes, that would turn you into plasma in air.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just to give people a quick fill-in if you're not a geek, decibels and the way it's measured is logarithmic. For every 20 decibels, something's 10 times louder. So then it becomes 10 times louder, 100 times louder, 1,000 times louder, 10,000 times louder, and so on and so on. 190 decibels is the absolute limit, roughly, for sounds in air. Because the way that it's measured is it's measuring sound pressure, right? It's
right.
It's
I
measuring.
didn't think there'd be anything that was over 200, and that'd be why. So right. So in
you're
air.
right. Yeah, you're right. In air, 190, anything but beyond that, physics breaks down and air basically just turns to plasma and turns into a ball of fire. So you can't. You can turn anything into a ball of fire if you put enough energy into it.
Well, so audio would ignite.
Well.
The air.
Well, you wouldn't be able to measure audio because it'd be so high energy. It would be like being in the middle of a nuke.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So if you had you have a speaker that gives out a noise that loud, it is going to ignite the air.
Yes,
is that what you're saying?
Essentially, yeah. Because it would have to be a device that could put out that much energy. It would essentially be a laser.
So is that louder than going to 11?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
So the only way to go louder than 11 is to go underwater, because sound pressure in something that's thicker, you can put more pressure into it. So what they found, these crazy scientists, is that for about 40 nanoseconds they could pulse a laser in between a gap of water, and it would how did they describe it? It would instantly boil the liquid. But at the
cool.
Like instant evaporation. But at the same time, they measured the pressure there as 270 dB. So if you want to be in the ultimate black metal band, you've got to go underwater.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Scientists have decided that metal will be an underwater sport from here on out, just to get more dB. Doom metal.
Metallica's next album's been filmed underwater. I mean, recorded underwater, isn't it?
Oh, you're beating me to it. I was going to say the mastering for the next album, next Metallica album's going to be done underwater to get it louder. Yeah.
Great minds, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So you could use speakers as a weapon then, essentially.
Well, the speaker itself would probably disintegrate before it became a weapon. I mean, you've got to think of sound at that level as a byproduct rather than the intention at that higher level.
Yeah, well, essentially the physics of vibrating a cone at a frequency in order to make a sound
Yeah.
could, if you vibrate it enough with enough, I guess, amplitude, then that sound becomes a weapon, like a sonic blast, like sonic boom, like Kyle.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's like, whoa, wait. So you're telling me that Street Fighter is not as stupid as I thought it was?
Oh, it's
By
totally
him
as
being able
stupid
to
as you thought it
potentially
was, but
making a sonic boom sound, he ignited the air in front of him that then fired forward.
I'm not entirely sure how he fired it forward, but I guess.
Because he's essentially like a speaker.
Yeah.
I mean, Street Fighter 2, just like their science is just on point. Who knew?
Hmm. Yeah. Sounds weird when you get to that kind of level. Like,
Hmm.
think of a really high-powered rifle and the noise that comes out of one of those things.
Yeah.
The bullet from that rifle's probably going faster than the speed of sound in air.
Hmm.
Which means that the bang that comes out of the gun is actually the explosion coming out at higher, probably louder decibels than air can actually recreate. But it's only the kind of the fall off of that you hear.
Hmm.
It all gets a bit blah. Yeah.
I want to make speaker guns. I think we should make speaker guns to defend the studio in case of zombie apocalypse.
Haven't we already got one of those on standby from Saints Row?
We do.
We've got a speaker gun somewhere around.
It's downstairs, unfortunately.
But yeah, there is the dubstep gun from Saints Row, and yeah, we've got one of those around.
Yeah.
Makes people dance and then explode.
It works as well.
Yes. Alright, tech news. Apple have released the fastest Mac laptop ever. It's an 8-core i9.
Can it actually do the speed they tell you can, though?
Probably not, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that the previous top MacBook Pro couldn't hit its top limits because of thermal throttling. Why are they cramming more into it, into the same design? How do they think that's going to go?
Because they spend more money on publicity than the people that reviewed it saying that it doesn't actually do the job, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
Because it's one of those things, again, that the people that are buying these now are not probably going to be pushing it to its absolute limit all the time. If I mean, that's not true, but I just feel if you know what you're doing with computers, you're not buying a MacBook Pro at that level. Like you could have done your research, but maybe I might be wrong actually.
Well,
There'll be a lot of disappointed people.
My question there would be, if you weren't using the power in it, why did you pay the extra? And if you are using the power in it, you're not going to get very long using that extra power before the intense heat that's generated slows the whole thing down. So you're not going to get what you've paid for. So
there you go. So it's like sound. You have to use this Mac underwater.
Yes.
To cool it down.
Yeah, to get the loudest sounds out of a MacBook Pro, you have to run it underwater.
That's right. That's what we're trying to say here.
Yeah.
I understand.
It's bizarre. I've absolutely... Go on.
I was going to say, so what are the specs?
So it's an 8-core i9.
Right.
Let's have a look. It just says find out more on the Apple website. That's not very good news article from Music Radar. Thanks, guys. Let's have a quick look. Tech specs. 15-inch.
There isn't a 17-inch.
There's not been a 17-inch for a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, years and years.
I've paid attention to that.
Yeah. But then there's not been a DVD drive in it for ages, so that's saved a lot of the space. There we go. So it's a 2.3 gigahertz, 8-core, 9th gen. So it doesn't say exactly what it is. Typical Apple.
Oh, yeah. You never know what generation. Oh, it says 9th gen processor.
Yeah, but it doesn't tell you the specific model, so it doesn't tell you if it's a K SKU, an H, or a U, or... Which all those numbers and letters are very important because they tell you a lot about the machine. Like any laptop that comes with a processor that's got the letter U at the end means it's ultra low voltage, and what that means is it's not going to perform as powerfully as something that looks similar on paper that's not got that U at the end, but your battery will last longer. Which is fine if that's what you want out of a laptop, and a lot of people do. But yeah, I mean,
K's for the
unlocked overclocking.
Yeah, overclocking it. Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's ones like the HQ models and stuff for, which are HK for laptops, and yeah, so there's different numbers that mean different things. You don't even need to have a number on the end of it, a letter even on the end of it, but they tell you what's going on. But yeah, you're paying more for a slower processor that's got more cores. Because the 6-core is $400 less and it's 2.6 gigahertz base clock. For me...
I'm just looking at the chat, so there's maths going on as to sort of sounds and speeds at different altitudes and things. It just made me laugh. I think we've created a monster here. Someone said in chat regarding this that the specs they said that they think the specs are rigged in some way. It's not necessarily that they're rigged, it's just that they hold back on the information, isn't it? And it's something Apple's always done with their processors, especially.
They've always been famously vague about things. Yeah. The issue really is not what the gear is. The issue is that as soon as you use it kind of in anger in a professional situation, it's going to generate a lot of heat, and that heat has to go somewhere. And as the processors try and run faster to keep up with your demand, the heat can't go anywhere. And so what Intel have designed the chips to do is, rather than blow up or turn the computer off, they slow down. So they keep slowing down until they're not generating too much heat. It's a safety mechanism, and it's a very clever one, which I have no issue with on its own. The problem is when you then try and stuff more and more power into a machine, but there's still nowhere for that heat to go. You're onto a fool's errand. And I've seen reviews from tech channels where they've taken like the previous one, which is the 6-core Mac, the i9, and they've tried to run it, and it wouldn't even run at like the 2.6 gigahertz base clock, let alone this 4.5 gigahertz boost. The boost is what happens in Intel processors when it's going as fast as it can, but it's not very hot. There's plenty of temperature headroom. It goes, you know what? Well, we've got all this heat we can use. Let's do it. Let's go for it. And great.
Yeah. I mean, even my K series, it's a 3.8 that can be clocked up to 4.4.
Yeah.
And if I go beyond 4.2, even with water cooling that I've got in my, and about 4 fans, it doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And it's cool. And obviously the temperature's going up a bit. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. But a lot of that is marketing as well, because like this turbo boost up to 4.8 gigahertz, that might be on 1 core out of 8 of them. And it might do that for a little while before that generates so much heat that it has to stop doing that. And so that's mostly marketing rubbish. I mean, it will do that a little bit for a little while, but you're not getting 8 cores to get a fast 1 core. You're getting 8 cores because you need 8 lots of performance, as it were. But the trade-off is there's nowhere for all that heat to go. And with it being battery powered, there's only so much that this processor can use in the first place. If you're not plugged into the mains, then there's only so much power it can draw from the battery anyway, so it will be self-limiting. And even if you are plugged in with the Apple MagSafe chargers, they don't give you that much power. I think it's like 95 watts, which sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about an 8-core processor, that's not. It's not very much at all. My quad-core laptop here, which is a couple of years older, admittedly, has a 230 watt power supply that's about the size of a house brick. And when I'm really doing like heavy video editing or that kind of thing, that gets warm, but it means that it doesn't suffer, and that nothing is limited in my machine. When I'm doing a full edit, everything, the processor, the graphics card, everything can run at 100%, isn't held back by any arbitrary heat limit, isn't threatening to melt the desk it's on, and yeah, because all the heat has somewhere to go. Yeah, it's crazy. Whoa. Oh, so while we're talking about the issue of computing power, a lot of us don't need that powerful a computer for what we need. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago on the show I was talking about spending £100 on a laptop that was kind of cheap? So I went ahead and did it. And last week the Lenovo ThinkPad arrived. I would wave it in front of the camera. Unfortunately, it's not with me at this very moment in time. But it's kind of a chunky old IBM ThinkPad style thing, because IBM bought Lenovo, so the Lenovo ThinkPad is the IBM ThinkPad. Spent £30 on an SSD for it. It's really, really, really fast.
Yeah?
Yeah, really fast. And it cost 130 quid. And I used that in the Reaper tutorial. So it's already kind of paid for itself, because I literally said on the video, I've got this crazy multi-thousand-pound studio computer behind me. I'm not going to use it for the video because it's not for those kind of, if you're starting recording, you've probably got something a little more basic.
Yeah, maybe like something like this.
Like this, dumph, yeah. And so I got this machine, which has never had Reaper or probably any digital workstation on it before. And installed the drivers, installed Reaper, did all the stuff on camera. So anybody who watches it, that's literally step by step what you do with your machine.
Yeah.
And it was working absolutely fine, and it was happy as you like. So that's going to make a lot more appearances on the channel. It's going to get its own video, and
So it was a really cool concept. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyone who wants to get a music production PC that doesn't need stupid amounts of power, you can do it on a very, very small budget. So there's going to be a video about that. Hopefully I'll be in the studio to film stuff like that tomorrow, but that depends on how well the baby is. But it's in the works, as is everything else. I've got yet another video to add to the pile. I had an unexpected parcel this week. Celestion have sent me another speaker. They've sent me one of their new Alnico Ruby speakers, which only just came out. And the best thing about that is I vaguely remember asking Celestion about it, but they were just like, we'll send you one, sure. So now I've got 2 speaker videos to do for them. Any simple practical tips to help keep a laptop cooler? Put
it underwater.
Yeah, put it underwater. Turn it off, turn it upside down, open it up, clean it.
Yeah, cleaning fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cleaning
a fan. That.
This laptop that I'm using right now, this really big, powerful machine, if I'm not careful and I don't clean it every few months, the amount of dust that gets in the fans blocks all the copper in the copper heatsink, so the air's not getting through it, and the CPU will reach 100 degrees, which isn't healthy. But if I turn it upside down, clean it out, give it a good clean every few months, that goes from 100 degrees down to like 50 degrees, which is more than fine. Yeah, so that's the main thing. And if your laptop's still getting hot when you've cleaned it, then your laptop wasn't really designed for heavy use. Because, like I was saying with this whole Apple example, if the heat's got nowhere to go, even with no blockages, no dust stopping it, if there's nothing mechanically stopping the heat from going, the design of the computer should allow for that heat to be removed.
Yeah.
That's a design thing at that point. And those laptop coolers that people used to get that had fans in that you'd sit them on.
Yeah, the little sort of dinner tray type thing.
Yeah, they were more harm than good most of the time, because they'd be trying to suck the air out of it, which meant the air couldn't get to the fans in the laptop to blow the heat out. Yeah. So yeah, number 1 tip for keeping a laptop cool, clean the thing. And don't be afraid to open it either, because you're probably not going to break anything. It's like Lego, you can just take pieces out, put them exactly back where you found them once you've cleaned the whole thing out with a hoover and a toothbrush and maybe a kind of compressed air if you're feeling fancy.
Actually, I do have a very good thing for that. If I can send this to you in the Skype chat. Don't know if you can bring it up on the screen in any way. But
Image.
that is, if you open up that picture, if I'll let you.
Yeah.
That is from our Dota 2. That is a guy in Thailand somewhere, and that's what he has to do to keep his laptop cool in order to play Dota during the summer. So that's one thing you can do. You can get a can of Pepsi out of the fridge, place it on top of the CPU, and put a fan on it directly.
Is he using like some sort of phase change cooler or something?
I've
That's ridiculous.
No idea, but it's absolutely insane.
That's another tip. Don't live in Thailand or anywhere that's really hot and humid.
Yeah, so if you, don't be this guy. But I mean, he's working, so,
Yeah, if it's working, can't say fairer than that. Wow. Alright, moving on. So, you know Black Sabbath, right?
No, who are they?
Funny guy. They're that band that just won't retire.
Right.
Yeah, they keep saying they're going to go on a retirement tour, and then they do another one and another one.
Oh, that's a funny story. Retirement tours. My dad called me up saying that could we go to the Elton John tour because he's touring. He's doing a world tour, and it's going to be his last tour. And he tried to book the tickets for November, and then didn't realise that actually because there's a gig in Manchester in November for this tour.
Right.
And I can hear myself through the headphones.
Bizarre. Hi.
I'll have to take the ear off. I'm sorry, I can't talk because I can hear myself. It's just, yeah, it's feeding back through the thing somehow. Skype. Oh, it stopped now. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and they had a date in November, and it turns out that his leaving world tour is like a 3-year tour. He's going to be touring for 3 years straight, and the tickets that he was looking to book are actually for November next year, which are currently on sale.
Wow.
So, but yeah, so people not wanting to retire, it's quite common.
The very old Rocket Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, Zakk Wylde, formerly of Ozzy's band, has decided that he's going to do a cover of the first Black Sabbath album, whole album, and they're going to play it faithfully. The Zakk Wylde and his band, and they're going to do it within like a 24-hour period, straight to tape, the way that Black Sabbath did it.
Ooh.
And so the album's going to be called Zakk Sabbath with Vertigo, because apparently Vertigo was kind of the working. Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of the working title apparently, or something like that, of the original album. So that's what they're doing.
I like it.
And
I like
it. But yeah, fair play to him that they're doing the entire album. But having toured with Ozzy, he probably knows it inside and out. So his band probably do as well.
Oh, Ivy's still struggling.
Yeah, she's singing us a song. She'll be okay. She's been crying at us like this for 3 days now, and she's not got a temperature anymore. She's doing okay. She's just being grumpy. Babies. Yeah, I got in from work at like 1 a.m. last night, and Mickey was at the end of her tether. She was like, I've been trying to get to sleep for 4 hours. I went in, gave her a bit of a cuddle, gave her a bit of a rock, put her in bed, out. Thank you and good night.
And I bet she hated you even more then.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah.
But it got the job done.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, kids, I've been looking after her for the past 2-3 days. So yeah, she's got used to me being just go-to for hugs and things.
Mm-hmm.
She's very cute, but when she's when she's not well, and I'm trying to get on with other work. It's like, ah!
Yeah.
When it's sod's law, isn't it? That I'll reach for the laptop and I'll touch it. It's like 3, 2, 1. Yeah, every time. She nearly tried to reprogram my phone this morning. She's a demon. She knows how to grab hold of it and turn it on, and Jesus.
Well, she called me the other day, didn't she?
She did. Yeah, that was out of the blue.
That was hilarious. We just sat watching a Game of Thrones or something it was, and then all of a sudden there's like baby on my phone. I was like, oh, hi baby. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah, I just looked down because she'd been playing with my phone, and I was like, Liam, hello, hi, what? Yeah. Oh, Game of Thrones is another thing that just finished.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we can mention anything with that. Do we want to be the spoiler people?
Let's not do any spoilers, but have you seen it?
I have, yes.
And I just thought it was interesting, not entire plot aside, that the end of this almost 10-year thing, and everyone's talked about how great it is in growing volume for years, and suddenly the crest of the wave is hit, and suddenly a lot of vocal minority are talking about how rubbish it is, and it's like, come on, you've been trying to champion this for so long, and now this thing is yours, and you're like, well, I want to destroy it now. Because it's not exactly what I want.
Is that not the same with like every great series though? Like it's so hard to finish something well. Most people are going to be disappointed because the thing is with something like Game of Thrones is everyone has their idea of what their ending is.
Yeah.
So when you've been watching it for 10 years, you want it to end a certain way, and you're not the writer. So if it doesn't end your way, then you might not necessarily like it. But there's plenty of shows like I watched a show called Scorpion. And that ended, and it literally ended in like the worst way possible, and it put such a sour taste in your mouth. Same with things like Fringe, that's got a questionable ending that makes people then question the show, and that should be like one of the greatest TV shows of all time. But because the ending is a bit questionable, people necessarily don't. I don't think you don't recommend it as much to people because you kind of think, oh, if I don't want you to go through that feeling that I've just had of not being happy with the last episode after watching a show for 5-10 years. And someone made a point that it's the first sort of, in its time period, it's the first big show like this in this, like, say, the last decade. Because I've had plenty of shows. I mean, you've got your Losts and Friends and all these sort of things that went on forever and then ended. The current generation are kind of like mid to late teens that are watching Game of Thrones. This is probably their first show where that's happened to them. So it's like, yeah, welcome to our world.
Yeah, I think that is something that's quite interesting as well, is that I've talked to quite a lot of people this week about Game of Thrones in person, and anyone who's over a certain age where they remember stuff like Friends or even How I Met Your Mother or something that's got
that was a polarizing one as well.
Yeah, a big story arc that's gone back a while. They've all talked about Game of Thrones and gone, yeah, it was alright, that. Didn't quite see it going that way, but...
My only issue is, and apparently it was actually down to the cast not wanting to do anymore, and this is, again, usually the issue. That was the issue with Fringe, which is why that and a network saying, okay, you're going to cancel it, so you've got to finish it. Like, the season was too short. Like, without spoiling I'm not going to spoil any of it because you don't want to spoil any of the series, but there's a character in it who has a big character arc in the last season, and I feel like it's just too quickly. There's not enough motivation for it and justification of things. Whereas if it was over like 3 or 4 more episodes, you could have made that make a lot more sense. So I think it's a real shame when shows that have lasted this long get a short last season.
Yeah, I suppose there is that. Yeah.
And also, he didn't write it, did he? Like, he told them what the ending should be based on what the ending he's got in his mind, but it's not based on his book. So there is that as well. This is the first season that's not based on his stuff, and in all honesty, I think you can tell.
Yeah. We'll see how the books go if they ever get finished, and then compare the two. That'll be fun. Yes. Alright, last news article for the day, and I think this one will appeal to you. Google Glass.
Why is that? Why is that?
You prepared for this? That's weird. I
You're
didn't.
impressed.
I didn't tell you about this news article, so I am quite impressed. So, for anyone listening on the podcast, Liam is now wearing his Google Glass. The version 1, was it the Enterprise, or what did they call it? The Voyager edition?
Explorer edition, yeah.
Explorer.
You couldn't buy. You had to apply to buy them, basically, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, they're worth £1,000. They were not worth £1,000.
No, they were not. Although we made a music video with them, so I guess we kind of recouped some of that money.
Yeah. Well, it was my own personal money I spent on it, so.
Right. So we didn't.
But,
Never mind.
No. No. But I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed playing about with them, and I thought it was really fucking cool. I thought it could have gone on, but yeah. So yeah, let's see what's this.
So this is version 2 with completely upgraded specs. It actually looks like glasses now, which really appeals to me. And it's got a new Snapdragon processor which runs Android 8. So it's miles ahead of the old one. It's a quad-core 1.7 GHz processor, which is a mile ahead of the old one. And apparently these are now being kind of designed and aimed at enterprise, so they're now aimed much more squarely at VR for CAD designers and architects. And with specs like that, I can actually believe that you could harness some sort of connection to a powerful machine and actually have it do stuff and not just melt and panic and fall off your head. Because that was one thing I noticed about the old one, is it wasn't very powerful.
No. But I mean, it's just a cool piece of technology, and the fact of I saw the potential, especially in business and enterprise, the potential for it to be quite huge. In that, my favorite thing about them, I mean, this was years ago, wasn't it, when they came out, 2014 or something?
Yeah, something
and
like that.
I remember walking around Barcelona with the Translate app on, and all I had to do is look at a sign in Barcelona and just look at it. And in most cases, if it was fairly clear sign, you didn't have to hold your head still or anything. Just literally look at a sign, and within about at most a second, the whole sign will be translated into English for you, and it would actually have the letters will have overtaken. So it will have, if it's a sign with a yellow background, it'll have created text with a yellow background, so you can't even see the original text, and all you see is an English written sign. And that
Wow.
was so cool. That was amazing. So it's the tracking technology of the camera and how it's able to create sort of this augmented reality. If you put that into business situations, there's countless different ways you can do it. Even down to the simple things of at the cinema, they scan tickets now with a little device. You could just have a guy stood there with some glasses on, just literally looking at the tickets. Yeah, that's a ticket. Yeah, that's a ticket, and it would just scan it and they'd move in. I don't know. I thought they were really cool. So I'm glad that they're coming back in this sort of form, because this is the place that they were for. Whenever I wore them in public, and I was doing masterclasses at the time, and I took them to the masterclasses to show people, and a lot of people just didn't. It's weird. Didn't like the fact that there was a camera on your face. They felt it was really intrusive to them. The fact that you had the potential to take a photo, and everyone just assumed that it was always recording, which, as we know, definitely isn't the case, because it got really hot and ran out of battery very quickly if you were to film.
Ah, yes, it did, yeah. It didn't like filming at all. Apparently it's got a USB-C port now on the new one for faster charging. And, yeah, Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 5 and stuff. But, yeah, I mean, for guys who work in the audio-video world, if this actually works without melting at the slightest bit of video work, I thought that might be quite an interesting thing to use and harness for people who do crazy stuff. Like a couple of weeks ago we talked about Imogen Heap with her crazy kind of VR gloves. Start to incorporate that with a bit of alternate reality stuff using something like Google Glass, and you're really starting to get into the realms of being able to use these gloves with the glass to see a thing and do a thing that's not actually there. And blah, the scope makes my head hurt a little bit.
Yeah, I don't. I thought they're really cool. We're definitely moving to this sort of technology. I think Google handled the whole launch of it really badly, because people didn't understand what it was. and the PR for it just went all the wrong way. And I feel like we could have been a lot further down the road to having some form of augmented technology that can help us within our everyday lives of being something that's accepted. It's not about having a camera on your face that can take pictures and film things necessarily, and it's about something that can give you that, like walking around London using it for sat nav was so easy. It was so easy. It was really good. Like the adverts that they showed you, on the very initial launch. I used mine like that, and it worked like that. You could just say, okay, take me to Starbucks, and it would, and you just walk along. You don't have to get your phone out or anything. Someone would text you. You could see the message, and then just reply to it through voice commands. I thought it was brilliant.
Mm.
I did like it.
That is definitely... Star Trek is the future. Talking of which, have you seen the trailer for Star Trek Picard?
I haven't, no.
No, it was released within the last few hours.
Okay.
And it's only a little teaser trailer. It's like 20 seconds long. But yeah, there's going to be an Amazon series with Jean-Luc Picard in it.
With who in it, sorry?
Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart.
Oh, he's actually going to be in it?
Yeah, he's the star of the new series.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Very cool.
It's all about him. It's Star Trek Picard. It's literally...
Yeah, no, but when you said Picard, I assumed that they were going to have someone else doing the role.
No, yeah, he's back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It's really exciting. Yeah, the guy who basically embodies modern Star Trek is just going to be, filming again. But he is obviously older, and that's part of the thing. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Indeed. We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes. So one of them was about an Audience ID4, which I've just reached for. Let's just switch over, because I have one right here. They're very, very capable little boxes, and I really quite like them. I use this quite a lot at home if I've got an idea I want to record. I'll just plug this in because it doesn't need any power or anything. Just plug a guitar in and go. So the question was something to do with stereo. How would you compensate for or exploit the difference between the JFET DI and the mic preamp for stereo guitar rig of stereo mic setup? Well, the short answer, Martin, is you can't. For a stereo mic setup, that doesn't work with this because it's got one microphone input. Just one. That's mono. The DI is not for microphones at all, and it doesn't work that way. And if you try and plug a microphone into it, even with a load of adapters, it will either sound excruciatingly quiet, or it just won't do anything that sounds nice at all, because that's to do with impedance and level matching, which... There's a reason why instrument inputs and microphone inputs are different things. They're expecting incredibly different signals. A microphone signal is minuscule. It's very, very, very tiny. So the point of a microphone preamp is to expand that as loud as possible, whereas a guitar one is kind of different. That it's not nearly as quiet voltage-wise, but it's got this thing called like impedance, where... a guitar pickup on a cable is like the old kind of joke of a paper cup on a piece of string, like a telephone. Impedance is how tightly that string is pulled. And so a high impedance input, which is what a proper DI input is like holding that string really, really tight to get the most signal out of it. And that's very, very different from a microphone input. So unfortunately, the ID4 is designed to have one microphone preamp and one of those DIs, and the reason there's only one of each is to make this affordable, because to get good quality components, you either cut corners, which they didn't want to do, or you have less things on there, less features, less goodies. So you just... But if you use a DI box, no, you're missing the point. If you use a DI box, you can't plug a microphone in. That's kind of the whole point. And anyway, this is a microphone and line preamp at the top. You can use it as a line input, but that would then be a low impedance line input. So yeah, you just can't really do that. Anywho,
I mean, with a preamp. So using a DI box with a preamp.
yeah, no, you can't really do that either. Because then you'd be sending a line level signal to a high impedance line input. You kinda can, but you shouldn't. And by the time you've bought an extra preamp, you may as well have just bought something like an ID14 that's got 2 mic preamps in it. I was thinking of stereo pedal board setup, so like 2 DIs. Well, you can only use one DI box going into the ID4 anyway. The other one's got one inbuilt, otherwise, because a DI box converts into microphone level, which this won't support on the DI. So, yeah, you're into sticky situations there and kind of trying to reach beyond what this was designed for. So, yeah, you give it a try, but it's not what it's for. So, moving on. Oh, yeah, have you voted today? Political for a second.
I haven't.
I have. I've only just had a chance to go and take the family and vote.
Yeah, I usually would vote in every election, but I really want to get into politics on this show. But no, I've not bothered.
But this is the old South Park joke of the turd sandwich and the giant douche. And how, yeah, you really should vote.
we're apparently, there's no way that we're not leaving Europe. It's European elections. I just don't see the point. And I'm missing something, but
Meh.
by the time that the people we're electing will be in the European Parliament, will have left already. So I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something, but
Well, yeah, but we were supposed to have left a while ago, so I'm kind of hedging bets.
yeah, I just can't see them not making us leave now. But I say don't want to get onto politics, but
Yeah.
yes. There's another one. Do you know what the ceiling is for a max CPU speed on computers? You know everything.
That's a very, very broad question, but the short answer is no, there isn't one. The CPU speed limit doesn't exist. That is entirely to do with the design of a processor, how much voltage you can give it, how much heat you are willing to let it generate.
Yeah, heat's going to be a big one, isn't it?
Heat is almost always the biggest factor, unless you're some absolutely crazy overclocker who's got enough cooling to cool anything. Because, yeah, heat buildup is the main thing, which is why, generally speaking, desktop computers can run much faster than laptops, because being so big, they generally have a lot more space to put coolers and ways of getting heat away, which means that then, in turn, the processors can be run faster, more heat will be made, more heat can be whisked away, and so on and so forth.
Is there an efficiency thing? Because to me it feels like processors are kind of on the market, and even kind of server-based processors seem to have capped out around 4.5 like several years ago, and don't really seem to be going much higher.
That seems to currently be kind of... Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a brick wall up there, but there are enthusiast desktop processors now that you can overclock comfortably to 5.2 gigahertz. But that is, at the moment, roughly kind of where we're at. There has been higher seen, but yeah, you're right, there's the efficiency curve, which is... Yeah, you put a lot more power in to get a little bit more out. But then that's overclocking in a nutshell. If we want to get really technical about it, every time that... Basically, Intel and AMD, although there are others, they make a new process that's smaller. If you've heard the whole things of 14 nanometer and 10 nanometer and that kind of thing, every time they make one that's smaller, the parts are smaller, the parts generate less heat. I don't know quite how. I think it's because the parts are actually smaller, there's just less electricity involved, less heat made. And because of that, they can then, like I said, run them faster, and the heat isn't as much, so there's somewhere for it to go. Recently, almost the last 10 years now, we've been stuck on the 14 nanometer process. Intel have had some serious issues with getting smaller than that. And it's to do with actually making the processors. That if you imagine a processor for a second as just a load of chips and a load of circuits, that has to be kind of stenciled onto a board. And then the parts are put on and all the chips are kind of stenciled out. And the nanometer thing is the smallest angle or part or anything of that design. And so they use lasers and ultraviolet rays and stuff to try and get that small to cut these things out. And they've hit a brick wall because it turns out lasers are actually about 10 times bigger than the parts of the processor. So it's like trying to do heart surgery with a wax crayon at this point, which is why they're really, really struggling, because the question now is how do you get smaller neatly?
Ant-Man.
Well, it's getting into Ant-Man territory at this point, I swear. Because the problem they've been running up against is it turns out they do this really crazy thing now where, because, like, let's say a laser beam, a really thin laser beam is that big, and the actual chip design is like this big. So yeah, it's like it's like putting gloves on and trying to do surgery. What they do is they get a stencil, they put the exact same stencil over the top, and then another version over the top. And so they kind of cover each other up a little bit, and the bits that are left in the middle, they cut that out. It's ridiculous. That's what's making the whole thing so difficult.
So basically almost masking the laser.
Yes.
So that, yeah.
Exactly that, yeah. The process that's just been broken, that's been worked on for 30 years, and I think AMD are going to get the jump here, mark my words, is a thing called extreme ultraviolet, or EUV, which is technology that's been really, really hard to develop. But the higher up the colour spectrum you go, the smaller the laser is. And so they hit ultraviolet and couldn't get any smaller, but now this beyond ultraviolet, they've actually worked out how to make smaller lasers, like thinner designs, which is where the new 7 nanometer stuff's coming out, and 5 nanometer, because they've pretty much cracked it. Intel haven't. Or at least if they have, they've literally only just got there, like within the last few weeks. And it takes years for processors to be designed, finalised, and ready for production.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting that in the next few years, we're going to break through this wall that we've hit. So, where we've hit this speed limit, almost hit this processor limit. If you look at Intel's Skylake processors, the 6000 series, if you look at everything... I think you might be. I am in the studio. I'm on a 6700.
Yeah, I'm on a 66K. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the 6000, 7, 8, and 9000 series are all essentially the same chips. They're a little bit kind of improved in terms of tidied up a little bit, but yeah, they're all basically the same, and there's been no headway in 5 years. But because of this EUV breakthrough, it's not going to be long now before the brakes are off and they go again. And so from there, I think it's not going to be long until we see 6, 7, 8 gigahertz processors as they get smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps they need to make the operating system more efficient rather than relying on hardware. That's a nice thought, but that's not quite how it works. Because it's not necessarily the operating system that's the biggest burden on a machine. It's the actual processing you want to do. And so an operating system is literally just a medium. Once you pass the instructions over saying, like, I need you to mix this album for me to a processor, it doesn't matter whether Linux sent it or whether Windows sent it or what. The processor's got to do those jobs. Mm-hmm. Based on the program, whether it's Reaper, Pro Tools, whatever, it's got to then do those jobs. So, yeah, it as much as everyone moans about macOS and Windows 10 and that kind of thing, how they can be a drain on the system, on a really powerful system, that should be largely irrelevant. And especially with the advent of lots and lots of cores, you'll probably find that 1 or 2 cores do most of the Windows or macOS work, and the rest of them are fairly happily left to do whatever it is you're asking of them. Screwed beef.
Hmm.
There we go.
So,
Yeah.
anything else? Have a look.
Yeah, trying to focus on that as a headspace whilst full of a cold is challenging. Anyway.
So, what do you think of quantum computing? I'm joking.
Oh. Yes. Thanks. Just like, so here's a tank full of sharks. Drop.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, my brain.
Is that us for the evening? Do we have anything else?
Unless there's any more questions from the baying crowd, then I think that's us for the evening, because I'm absolutely shattered. And
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You seem a bit you got ill.
yes,
You're a superstar for being here anyway, though.
I don't do days off.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows that.
Is it wise to assign a separate core for a DAW?
No, because that's not how DAWs work.
Yeah, you need more than one core, surely.
Yes, the way that DAWs tend to work is that they assign their own threads. They have their own schedulers, pretty much, and a lot of them are very multi-threaded. Reaper, I know for a fact, will assign different threads for different channels with lots of processing on, and then when they're all processed, it will then assign them to a thread to combine it, put it through any processing that's got to do. Because if you're going through groups and then master process and that kind of thing, it all has to be done in a certain order.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the processor pretty much is best left alone unless it's a special case. Like, have you seen the, what do you call them? The Threadrippers, the 32-core monsters?
Yep.
Yeah, they're terrible for stuff like audio processing, it turns out. Much like they're terrible for games. I don't know if you've seen any stats for those things.
Not really. No, I remember them coming out and it being kind of like the big thing, and I actually remember quite a lot of programmers saying that, being given them actually by AMD, saying that and they were really hyping on the pro gaming scene.
Well, the thing is, the 16-core Threadrippers, incredible. They're brilliant. It's the ones above that. There's a design, not flaw, but the way that they've been designed for games and for audio isn't really compatible. The way that Threadripper kind of works is it's basically a bunch of Ryzen processors on the same chip, which is really kind of cool. So the 16-core one is 2 entire Ryzen dies on the package. Mm-hmm. And both of those Ryzen dies are connected to the RAM, and they're connected to each other through what's called the Infinity Fabric, which is all very clever. The problem when you go to the 24 and 32 core ones is that there are more Ryzen dies on there, but there's not enough actual pins on the processor to connect those directly to the RAM. Mm-hmm. Which means that they have to then draw everything they work on from the other Ryzen dies and through kind of going round about the houses.
Right.
So for really heavy processing workloads like GPU rendering, where it's like Blender and that kind of thing, where it's like, take as long as you need, here's all the data, go.
Yeah.
They're incredible. But for anything where you need them to process little things now, and they've never seen that data before, that's the main thing. Like with a game, the game's not going to know whether you and your opponents are turning left or right from millisecond to millisecond. So the data is fed to it as quickly as possible, which is where overclocking RAM and that kind of thing can make a difference. Mm-hmm. If your processor can't see your RAM, it's got to wait for the information, and it can be the difference between 200 frames a second and 30 frames a second. I kid you not.
Yeah.
It tanks because of the penalty involved. Although there is a switch in software called game mode for those processors, which, depending on which game it's for, will actively disable the 16 cores that would cause the issue. For some games that doesn't work, and I don't know if that would work for something like Reaper or Pro Tools. But that kind of defeats the object to me.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I got 32 cores, but I'm going to press a button that disables half of it.
Yeah.
Well, what was the point? Whereas for those workloads where those cores can actually do stuff, great, all day long. So it's very application specific. But yeah, those first Threadrippers that came out were up to 16 cores, and so it's only an issue for people who are absolute ballers and don't do their research, essentially. So yeah, for anyone who says, are more cores better for audio production, I've always said yes, but. So it's yes, but.
It's all relative, yeah.
Yeah, it's all relative. Are you running absolutely huge track counts? So probably, definitely yes. And yeah, be careful of processors like that. And yeah, I've always been wary of like dual socket machines as well, with two actual processors in, for a very similar reason, that passing the data from one processor to the other can be a huge penalty in terms of processing power.
Yeah, they're usually server-based systems, aren't they?
Yeah.
People are trying to ham-fist into a home or office setup. They're designed for server racks. Usually, you have to it's a server rack motherboard you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, but then that answers the old question for me of why not just have more processors in a professional machine, like, you know, in the bigger studios. Why don't they just have a PC, Mac, whatever, that's got 10 processors in? The problem is the communication between them all is such a big time penalty that audio latency gets absolutely destroyed. Question, what do we think about CUDA in a music PC? Similar kind of thing where, well, firstly, someone would have to program plugins to take charge of using something like CUDA, which is massively parallel. And also that could incur some massive latency penalties. If someone could do it well, that could be great. I mean, there are certain processes, like there's a plugin, or there's a, yeah, what's it called, Nebula, by Acoustic Audio, and that's some of the most realistic processing I've ever heard on audio. But it's incredibly intense processor wise. But if you could shift that off to something like a graphics card, that'd be very clever. Yeah, but again, the difference between audio production and video production from a technical standpoint is massive. And that's what a lot of people kind of miss, is that they're like, oh, well, I do a lot of video production and my graphics card really makes it fast. Why can't that work in audio? And I get that. I get the frustration if you've got all this computing power and you can't use it. Because if I could, I certainly would. But the problem is, it's a whole different kind of workload. Video production is, generally speaking, really, really big sets of data that don't rely quite as much on being done within the next millisecond.
Yeah.
Audio is very small amounts of data, but they have to be done now. They have to be done literally within the next couple of cycles. So...
And also, like you were saying, with sort of gaming, the video, in most part, the computer can predict what it's going to have to do next, whereas with audio, you're recording something live. It's getting the data as it's coming through.
Yes.
So it can't pre-render audio samples because, well, they come into it live, they're brand new, so...
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. A lot of video production, especially encoding and decoding video, a lot of assumptions are made in the encoder and decoder that the next frame is going to be very similar. Because that's how animation moves. If you think 30 frames a second, your hand's doing this in the frame, the rest of the frame's not moving. So a lot of assumptions can be made, and then it's only every X number of frames they do an entirely new frame. Depending on the codec, I'm getting a little deep here, but
it won't process the background and things like that.
Yeah. So the idea is, and even with processors doing processing work, they know that the last process was video decoding. It used this part of the processor. It's probably going to do that again, so it can shortcut a lot of stuff. It's called pipelining. And audio can do that to an extent, but the fact that it could be completely different every millisecond, and the demand is that it must be done within that time frame, makes it a very different prospect.
Indeed.
Yes. So I think that's probably a good place to call this evening's show before I
Yeah, it seems to be
croak.
getting really dark. I've just noticed that my room is a lot darker than it was when it started.
Yeah, you do live in Mordor, though.
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
Yes,
I think it's something's coming. Sauron is maybe down the road.
that's that orange glow, is it? I thought it was a street light, but apparently you're being
Yeah.
watched.
Cool. Right. Well, it's been a pleasure. You go get some rest.
I certainly will. I'll send a million emails to people because I need to catch up on my emails now. I've not got a screaming child on me.
Cool. Sounds
So,
good.
yes, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll
Yep.
see you
Cool.
probably in the video
Bye-bye.
on Monday and definitely this time next Thursday. See
Yep.
you then. Goodbye.
Yep. See you next week.